Good morning and welcome to the Lightcast studios for this live analysis of the employment situation, also known as the monthly jobs report, a U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics report that gives us some health into the economy. On this February 3rd, 2023, I'm your host, Christopher Laney, and I am joined by two very talented economists, senior labor economist Elizabeth Crofoot and senior labor economist Rucha Vankudre. Elizabeth, Rucha, welcome to the studio.
Hey, Chris.
Good morning. So the entire country right now is having this cold spell, but the one thing that's not cold is the labor market. That seems to be pretty hot. So Rucha, I'll start with you. We've added a lot of jobs. What are you seeing in this report? Are you kind of shocked by it?
I'm completely shocked. I think pretty much all of the labor economists in the country this morning are very shocked. I think everyone was expecting a number of added jobs around maybe 100, 200,000, maybe a little bit more. 517,000 is totally incredible. And that's on top of, there was some worries that with the survey week being during a point of cold weather, maybe that would reflect lower numbers. And this is an incredibly high number. And that plus the fact that unemployment is now the lowest it's been since 1969, 3.4%, which is just unbelievable. So I think the question on everyone's minds is, how can the labor market keep getting stronger and stronger? And how can this keep happening while at the same time we are seeing prices come down? So it's pretty incredible.
Elizabeth, earlier this week during our JOLTS analysis, I had quoted something from the Wall Street Journal that said that the health of our economy is deteriorating. When you look at today's jobs report, do you agree with that? Or is there any part of our labor market that you think is truly struggling?
It's hard to, say that it's deteriorating when you are seeing 500,000 plus gains in jobs, right? But this labor market isn't, acting uniformly across all sectors of the economy. So there is a little bit of weaker, job gain in other sectors of the economy. I mean, manufacturing, for example, continues to be slowing down, in terms, they have generally lower job gains. But yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of strength. Even construction seems to be holding up. All the service industries as well have been holding up, especially leisure and hospitality. And these are areas where we are expecting a slowdown in job gains, and we just haven't been seeing that. So overall, I would say that, there is a lot of strength. We did see decline in the information sector, which is, exposed to that string of high-tech layoffs. But that was just, one area. Professional business services, which is also sensitive to layoffs, we did see some strong gains there. So overall, it's hard to say that to see any deterioration in this labor market.
Rucha, we've been talking a lot about the possibility of a recession, yet another decrease in unemployment. We're adding jobs in the economy. We're not seeing layoffs occur in the numbers that I think we expected to see, especially during economic uncertainty, especially even in the seasonal kind of industries. As an employer and seeing the state of our economy, what do you believe employers are considering as they're thinking about their labor force and trying to decide, do I lay off? Do I hire up? What do you think's going on in their head?
I mean, I think what we're seeing right now is, as Elizabeth said, frequently we see layoffs actually increase in January. It's kind of a typical time for that. And although this report wouldn't show layoffs, you would expect that, if there were mass layoffs, then we wouldn't be adding many jobs at the same time. And so the fact that we're not seeing that, particularly in places like leisure and hospitality, which added, I think, about 128,000 jobs, really suggests that I think employers know that the labor market, even though we thought it was impossible, is somehow getting tighter. And so if you lay off those workers, you might not be getting them back. And along with tech, keep in mind that most of those layoffs that were announced would not be showing up in these unemployment numbers to begin with, right? Usually they get a couple months period before they even would file for unemployment, right? Because they probably are still working at the moment. And then on top of that, a lot of them find jobs very quickly. And, as we've been saying over and over again, that really is a very isolated part of our economy. So I think, even the fact that we had heard about all of those layoffs and the economy is stronger than ever really shows how that's one particular sector. And even there, things are just really holding strong.
Elizabeth, the Fed increased rates earlier this week. Now, if the Fed would have waited until today and they were looking at this report to make that determination, Do you think they would have raised rates at the same level? Do you think they would have done more or less? What's your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting question. And I think what you have to remember is that these month-to-month fluctuations in the jobs report, they are fluctuations, right? And 1 month does not make a trend. And I think that's what the Fed would focus on. And especially with January data, it's really difficult to interpret because especially with this month in particular, there are a lot of technical adjustments that are being made. A lot of the data aren't comparable from December to January in a strict sense. So we do need to take these data with a grain of salt, especially from the household side. So the unemployment rate, the labor force participation rate, all of that, it's difficult to interpret. I think the Fed is laser focused on wages, right? Inflation, and they are seeing a tick down in average hourly earnings and overall wage gain. So that's a positive sign. So I think they're going to say, let's continue to keep our eye on the data, and they're going to hold steady until, they are seeing that inflation rate come down. I think that's what they're laser focused on.
Elizabeth, I'll stay with you. You both you and Rucha kind of alluded to this. So this question is for both of you. Looking at the industry specific data, you guys have both touched on this a little bit. What specific data points, when you're looking at that industry data, really stood out to you when we're trying to determine the health of our industries here in the United States?
Yeah, I'll take that one first. What really surprised me was the gain in temp help services. Usually temp help is a bellwether for the overall health of the labor market. And generally, when you see a slowing in the economy, that's the first industry to start to see a decline, right? Is employers will get rid of their temporary workers before their permanent workers. And we are seeing in the last month in January, an increase in temp help. So that was, surprising to me. It's another signal that labor demand is actually increasing, at least increase in the month of January. Another, signal of increasing labor demand is hours worked. Hours worked actually ticked up. They were on a downward trend, but we're seeing a slight increase in the latest month. So there's a lot of mixed signals in this report. So it's hard to know what to make of it.
Rucha, how about you? Was there anything in the industry data that really stood out to you?
I think I was pretty surprised by the 82,000 jobs added in the professional and business services, just because I think that was one where we've been hearing a lot in the news, and we were kind of expecting, I think, things to kind of start cooling down there first. And that often, tends to be sometimes more discretionary spending as well on the part of B2B. And so I think we could have expected that maybe that would slow down first before some of the other things that might be more seasonal. And so I think that was pretty surprising and showing how strong everything is.
Rucha, I'm going to stick with you on this next question, and then same question will go to Elizabeth. But do you think that this is a sign of a permanent tighter labor market because of everything that we've been talking about over the last couple of years in the demographic drought, whether it's what happened during the pandemic or baby boomers retiring or a variety of indication that shows why our labor market is so tight today? Do you think this is a permanent thing, or do you think at any point it could loosen up? So Rucha, starting with you.
I mean, I think that's a little bit tricky, right? Because a tight labor market means two things, right? It means that not enough people, but it also means lots of jobs. So yes, I think to the extent that we can expect jobs to sort of stay at least where they have been for a little while, then yes, we're going to have a permanently tight labor market because those people are not there, right? We can't get them back. But at the same time, if something were to happen to suddenly turn things around, then I could see how that might fluctuate a little bit.
Elizabeth, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of tightness of the labor market, I have to go back to earlier this week with the JOLTS report because we're seeing elevated job openings still, elevated quits rates, way above pre-pandemic levels. Those first-time claims for unemployment insurance are also way down. Those are the main indicators of tightness, right? And we are hearing a lot of CEOs that are saying that they're expecting and preparing for a recession, but at the same time, they know that on the other side of any type of economic downturn, they're still going to have trouble finding workers and retaining them. And so they're going to hunker down with the employees that they have and not let them go because they have their eyes set, after this blip, what's going to come next. They're still expecting those labor shortages and the tightness to continue.
Elizabeth, I'll leave this question with you. Is this report any sign of a soft landing?
Oh man, it was so strong. It's shocking. It really is. On last few minutes, it's just really hard to digest all of this information at once. And I mean, this is more than a soft landing, right? I mean, 500,000 jobs, it's much stronger than what, anyone has expected. Really, it seems like it's going to be a bumpy ride, if anything, because if we're seeing a lot of swings in the labor market, really what we want to see is a moderation in job growth, slowly coming down. That's what the soft landing is, right? This is sort of this bumpy, turbulent ride to who knows where. So, I'm not really sure where this is going.
Rucha, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, I kind of feel like, are we actually landing or are we just taking off and going the wrong direction again? Like, hard to say. I mean, the labor market is incredibly strong. But at the same time, when we looked at those wage numbers, I think as Elizabeth mentioned, they are coming down slowly. The trends are in the right directions. We saw something similar with the ECI. So, I mean, I honestly don't even know how that's possible in terms of theory. It's something I'm going to have to think about a lot today.
Well, Elizabeth and Rucha, I want to get your final thoughts on this report. Top 2-3 takeaways. Rucha, I'll start with you. What can we take away from this jobs report?
Just the strength of the labor market sort of surpassing everyone's expectations. The number of job growth is amazing. The historically low, in fact, unemployment rate, which I don't think we thought we were going to see for a long time, is amazing. And so, but at the same time, the wage growth is going the way we want it to. So I think things are looking good, if not very confusing.
Elizabeth, how about you? Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one is just to take this report with a grain of salt. We have a lot of disruptions and technicalities, from weather-related events, potentially to benchmarking in the household and even the establishment side of the survey, that makes January data hard to interpret. So we really need to look, for trends coming up in the next few months. Also, I didn't really see any signs of labor market cooling, right? We have not only strong job gains, but temp help. Demand went up, hours worked are going up. But, one silver lining here is that wage growth is moderating, and it moderated pretty substantially. So, who knows, maybe that is a really good sign for achieving the Fed's 2% target eventually down the line. Not this year, but, at least it's in sight.
Well, Rucha, Elizabeth, this has been a good conversation. Clearly a shocking report, and there's a lot going on. And so, as you both have mentioned, watching those trend lines is really important. So thank you again for your analysis. For more information on this analysis, you can visit lightcast.io. From the Lightcast studios, I'm Christopher Laney, and we will see you again next month.